because, as you'll see from some of the tier names, the committee is not impressed with the quality of play and quality of teams overall in the NFL thus far this year. But also, we had our first 2 eliminations of the year. So let's go ahead and show the 2 eliminated teams, the Patriots and the Panthers. Last week, they were on the facing elimination line, and they both lost. Panthers got rolled by Caleb. The Patriots lost by a heel to the Miami Dolphins, and so they're eliminated. Wilds, don't listen.
I'm not taking the cameras.
18 teams will eventually be eliminated, and so we're going to have to eliminate some more. So this week, we have 3 facing elimination on the tiers. Tennessee faces Indy. They have to win it. The Browns go to Philly. They have to win or they're eliminated. The Raiders, with Aiden O'Connell as their new starting quarterback. That'll fix things, Antonio. They play the Pittsburgh Steelers or they are eliminated. Hot seat, Dennis Allen, Doug Peterson,
Hot seat.
Nick Sirianni. Well, yeah.
First place a little while.
Woody Johnson opened the floodgates.
Oh.
Listen, they had they're 2-3 fire their coach. You don't think the Saints, they lose 4 straight games, could fire their coach? You don't think that trip to London's been a death knell for folks? If Doug Peterson loses to Caleb, lose your Patriots for sure. He ain't getting back on the flight. And Nick Sirianni, the best thing that happened to the Eagles all year PR-wise was they didn't play last week. So people were like, oh, maybe they're okay. Like, no, we saw your last football game. Next, QB quandary. So for the Dolphins, it really is, when is Tua coming back? Because with that division where it is, they're fine.
Think of how absurd this is to put the Saints, the Jets, and the Eagles below the Giants and the Dolphins. I actually think the Colts are going to be pretty good with Joe Flacco. This all depends on if Joe Flacco is playing. If it's not Joe Flacco, it's absurd to put the Colts up above them as well. But to think that the Jets, the Saints, and again, the Saints now, Derek Carr is injured and banged up, but that's hilarious. I mean, Tua's not even playing with the Dolphins right now. All of a sudden, the Giants now are a good team. I mean, come on, get out of here with that nonsense.
They're 2-3, and
get out of here.
Right there. For the Colts, they're in a weird spot because it's like, well, we definitely should play the physically, freakishly talented kid we have that we draft in the top 5. But as far as winning football games in 2024, the old man just slung for 300 again in Joe Flacco. And the Giants, Greg, I kind of get it because I watched that whole game this week.
Here we go.
Like once every 6 weeks, Daniel Jones has a performance, and you're like, what? You drove me back in a little bit. It's like, why can't you just do this every week? And you're like, he's a big guy. He's fast, too. He's strong. I get it. Maybe. Denver's got a great defense. Kyler's fun. Harbaugh and Tomlin will do some cool things. Maybe in a league where nobody's great, none of those 4 teams can be discounted. And again, the Chargers didn't play this past week. They got to get healthier. Great win by the Cardinals with Denver, 3-2. Defense playing great. NFC playoff morass. All 5 teams are 3-2. All 5 teams have a few things you really like and a few things you're like, that's not going to work. But at least 3 of this line, maybe 4, are making the playoffs. Yeah. And so I'm not going to go through them all one by one, but they're all kind of, despite this not being the standings, it's coincidental. They all have the same record and they're all on the same line. All right, this is for Kevin Wilds. The committee made me name this tier this. Sorry, not sorry. Oh, but they're a combined 4-11. Doesn't matter. The Niners' pedigree and number of Avengers, and the fact that the Bengals and Rams in recent history with the same coaches and the same quarterbacks and the same wide receivers played in a Super Bowl means we are going to give those teams the benefit of the doubt. As long as Matt Stafford is there, as long as Joe Burrow is there, as long as Nicky Bosa and Fred Warner and George.
Okay, you know what's really funny about this? A handful of things, quite frankly. He thinks that the Rams are so badly injured and the 49ers are a mess. He thinks Brock Purdy's trash. He genuinely thinks Brock Purdy's like a bottom 15 quarterback. Then why are those 2 teams ahead of the Dallas Cowboys and the Chicago Bears for that matter. And how are the Chicago Bears on the same level, and old man Kirk Cousins and Geno Smith on the same level as top quarterback in the NFL, Dak Prescott, with CeeDee Lamb, right? Like, it's like those things just fundamentally make zero sense, honestly. And it's really also funny because to hold on to the Cowboys have now beaten 3 teams. They have 3 wins. All of those games they've won are all people below them, technically. They've only beaten teams that are below them, right? So I can't help but just find that quite funny. In fact, all of these teams, for the most part, have only beaten teams below them, or on the same level of them, technically. And so that's where these tiers continue to kind of largely make no sense. I'm okay putting the Falcons and the Buccaneers and the Seahawks in the same category. I would put the Cowboys below that. I would put the Cowboys in the maybe. I would put the Cowboys with the Broncos. The Cardinals, I would probably move them up, mainly because of what Kyler Murray can do. The Chargers are so tough because they're injured. And I think the Steelers are probably also an maybe. I would still put the Steelers in the same category as the Cowboys, even though obviously the Steelers lost that game. And before you guys, freak out and say, well, they just beat them, they're obviously not on the same level. And it's like, okay, well, the Saints beat the Cowboys, and yet the Cowboys are above the Saints. So you can't just go by who beats who. So save that comment, because it doesn't actually make any sense. So, yeah, just
George Kittle and Trent Williams and Kyle Shanahan and all those guys are there. We're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Next, incredibly fun, not sustainable. So now, by not sustainable, these teams, either one of them could absolutely make the playoffs. But for the
make the playoffs.
Yeah, they could make the playoffs.
They're making
the playoffs. But are the Vikings going to be this both sides of the ball juggernaut? Of course not. Is all year long? Is Washington going to be able to continue to be an offense-only team when the offense is led by a rookie 190-pound quarterback? Probably not. But they are incredibly fun right now, what Minnesota's doing defensively and what Justin Jefferson does and what Washington's doing week after week on offense. Not long-term sustainable, but fun. Relying on reputation.
I'm going to be making a separate video, actually, for both those teams, for the Commanders and the Vikings. I'm going to cut that clip and talk about them both differently, because he just threw some major shade at both of those teams. And again, if the Commanders aren't sustainable and the Vikings aren't, well, then again, why aren't the Cowboys, especially for the division with the Commanders, why aren't the Cowboys above them, though, then? Like, that doesn't really make sense. And it's funny, because if you're a Vikings fan and you're like, well, wait a second, that means, the 2 other teams are above them. And again, why aren't the Bears above the Vikings then? Because the Bears keep just getting better and better and better. And Caleb Williams, according to Greg and Nick for that matter, is going to be a top 5, top 8 quarterback by the end of after their bye. So, because he's all about predictions. Because remember, this isn't just about, because he even said this, it's not just about who they are today. It's also trying to predict the future as well, which Greg called Nick out specifically for the Mahomes Mountain as well, about the Vikings. So if that's what you think, why would you not put the Vikings farther down if it's not sustainable, right? Incredibly fun, not sustainable. So why aren't they then moved down? It doesn't make sense.
Listen, all 3 of these teams were better last year, but because of, for the first 2, their coach, because of the last one, their quarterback, because we have seen these teams win double-digit games consistently. Green Bay, not double digits last year, but win a playoff game. The Lions last year, seemed to be on the ascent. You feel like they are more likely than not to get it right in kind of a topsy-turvy NFL. But thus far this year, none of these 3 teams have been wildly impressive on a week-to-week basis. The Bills obviously coming off 2 really, really tough losses. Wow, good teams, finally. They're at the top of the tiers. We get to a couple good teams. It's nice to see. The Ravens, it really should be 4-1, not because they were going to get a touchdown and a 2-point conversion against the best defense in football in week 1. But because they shouldn't have lost to the Raiders, kind of lack of concentration killed them. And the Texans, C.J. Stroud this year has had a little Mahomesian as, even if I'm not having a great game, I'm going to come through in the big spots. Now, Nico Collins to the IR is a temporarily devastating loss for them because you saw even in that game this past week, the moment he went out, their offense went away. And then, of course, undefeated and unbothered, almost unworthy talking about. They've won 11 consecutive games. It's the 12th straight year they've had at least one 5-game winning streak. Mahomes, it's the third 10-plus winning streak of his career, and they have the best defense in football. That, Greg Jennings, is the committee's tiers heading into Week 6. Even in that game,
I want to hear what Greg Jennings has to say, but then I also want to just share real fast. I think it should be Kansas City Chiefs, Ravens, Texans, Lions, Packers should all be in the same tier of relying on they should be at the top, but they should be pretty much all those teams minus the Bills should be on relying on reputation, because all those teams were better in years last year, or at least right now, the way how they're playing right now. Because I think there's no truly great team right now. I mean, look at the Ravens. If they're really all the way high up there and the Bengals are sorry, not sorry, then it's like, well, then that game shouldn't have been as close as it was. It shouldn't have been as competitive as it was. I think the Chiefs, again, they played the Saints, who Nick thinks is a terrible team. So that was like technically that was their most impressive win, the versus the Saints, but thinks the Saints are trash. So it's never that impressive to beat a bad team, except for the teams that Nick just likes, and you just want to say that was a huge win. And it's like, was it? Because it was a bad team. When another team that you don't like beats a bad team, you're like, well, it was a bad team. So and Nick is he's very Mr. Consistent in that regard. We know that, right? He only does that if it's the Cowboys, the Bears, the Chiefs, but if it's a team he doesn't like, it was just the Patriots. It was just the Panthers. And it's like, well, the Bears beat the Panthers, and you had confetti falling from the sky. So that's why I really think relying on reputation. It's relying on the reputation of who we know the Chiefs have been, who Patrick Mahomes has been, and Andy Reid and Spags and all of that. I do think the Chiefs have the best defense and are the best coached as well. So, it's not the worst thing to have them above these other teams, because reputation does precede itself. But at the end of the day, I do think majority of these teams, and this is why I actually kind of like the relying on reputation, because I've actually said this in a few videos now about a few different teams and quarterbacks, where it's like, if we just removed everything from the past and knew nothing about these teams and what they've accomplished and how great their coaches truly are and what they've done in the past, and same thing with quarterback accolades and all of that, and we just looked at these teams right now, right, you would say, honestly, probably that the Minnesota Vikings are the best team, right? You technically would say that. But in terms of just the main of the teams that Nick has at the top, you would put the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Texans, the Lions, and the Packers. The Packers are a little bit tough because they've had the injuries with obviously Jordan Love. You would probably put them in that category, and the 49ers. The 49ers you probably wouldn't if you're saying you don't know what their past is. But you would say, hey, I don't know who's going to win in any of these games, right? Like some of them, they've had some really nice moments. They've had some really bad moments. They've kind of just got on by with the win on some weeks, and another week they won pretty convincingly. Like it's been so uneven, which is why I think none of these teams are great right now. At least most of these teams are just good. They're just good, who can sometimes play great, sometimes play bad, and it's just like, how's it all going to unfold? But I think people still believe in the 49ers because of their reputation, because of what they've been able to accomplish. So if we're considering the past now, it's like I throw the 49ers up there. And that's what makes the Vikings so hard, because if you're going to consider the past and the reputation, then you're going to be like, well, Sam Darnold, he's a pumpkin. He's going to be terrible, yada, yada, yada. The Commanders, it's a rookie quarterback. What is he going to be able to do? The past shows us that rookie quarterbacks run out of steam. They can only go so far, and, all of this type of stuff. So it's pretty interesting. I think at the end of the day, if you move the Vikings up and probably moved the Bills down, but you could probably keep them up because it is still Josh Allen, so you just don't know what to expect. Leave them up there. It's not the worst thing, but I just wouldn't put them in, this 1, 2, 3 type system. I would just put them all in the same group and just call it relying on reputation any given Sunday, right? It's just relying on reputation because we know what these teams have done, but also any given Sunday. I don't. If the Ravens played the Chiefs again, I don't know who's winning that game. If the Lions played the Chiefs, I don't know who's winning that game. If the Packers played the Ravens when Jordan Love's finally full strength and ready to go, I don't know who's winning that game. Texans versus the Ravens, I don't know, right? Like I have no idea. If the 49ers get Christian McCaffrey back, which is a big if right now, that changes everything. And I would say in terms of the incredibly fun, not sustainable, I would say, for at least the Commanders, I would move the Vikings out of that. The Commanders, it's understandable to a degree because it is a rookie quarterback, although I've talked about that at length. Stop waiting for him to kind of fail or pop. I would look at it where I would say incredibly fun. Let's keep watching, right? Rather than just automatically saying, not sustainable. He's a 190-pound rookie quarterback. Like, okay, cool.
It's the third 10-plus winning streak of his career, and they have the best defense in football.
Going to do.
Thank you.
Do what?
Sam. Thank you, Greg.
With the Vikings, man.
I moved him up.
Come on.
How many times are we going to do this?
Oh, because
Like,
they
this
got
is
Saleh fired?
This is
How many times? All right,
this
that's
is
good.
a 5-0 team.
That's good.
Yeah,
I didn't get it.
this is a 5-0 team
That was nice.
who all they do is win. If you look at the teams that they've played, they beat the 49ers.
Yep.
They're ahead of them.
They beat the Packers, who they are not ahead of. They beat the Texans, who they are not ahead of.
Correct.
They have Detroit coming up at the bye. We'll see if you end up switching them
They
in
beat the
and they are worthy enough. But how many times do I have to do this? Can we please put up the full screen?
Here we go.
Of their defense. Like, they're for real. When you talk about they're fun but not sustainable, this is sustainable.
No, the defense
this
might
is
be.
very much so sustainable. And then you talk about, like, quarterback play. This is pumpkin watch this, pumpkin watch that. But their pumpkin watch guy is actually not turned into a pumpkin, but yours may be on the most pumpkin watch that we've seen of his career. I'm not saying that Patrick Mahomes isn't the greatest. I'm not.
All right,
but
well,
I'm just,
you
I'm
said
just
that 2
looking.
weeks ago, which
I'm
is why
just
you're on the
looking
board
at
and you
the
said Josh
stats.
Allen's better than him.
I'm just looking
forgot
at
about that.
I'm just looking at the numbers, and I'm trying to figure out why Sam Darnold is getting all this hate from you, and his
We know
team
why.
can't even move up the tiers
Oh, they did move
because of him.
Okay.
They're a 5-0 team, and this is what they do. Offensively, they're first scoring 23 or more points. Defensively, they're first allowing 17 or fewer points. I mean, what more can this team do?
So listen,
Like, what can they do?
They have been excellent. But as the committee doesn't like to be like the facile power rankings, where it's just, if you take a snapshot of, like, I'll just say it, the herd hierarchy from week 3, you're going to be like, oh my God. Like, what happened to those teams? Look at USA Today, week 15 of last year. It's mortifying for all involved. We like these to be able to have real staying power. That's first of all. Second of all, I don't know if we can put up the Darnold Mahomes side by side again. But Greg, what you don't understand is this is the exact reason for the skepticism. Because you're right, Greg. These two teams do have the same record. And one is, despite their quarterback playing far and away the worst football of his career, and the other one is because, in part, of the quarterback playing far and away the best football of his career.
So penalize him.
Not penalize him, but try to be a little forward-thinking. Say, do we think in 4 weeks, in 5 weeks, in 6 weeks, these things are going to look like that? Or do we think when they flip a bit, one team's going to go even higher and one team's going to struggle a bit? That's all. We already saw it. It's not like Darnold's played great throughout. We just saw him in London.
I'm going to say this last thing because I've been on your side with this whole Purdy thing.
Yeah.
We saw this all last year with Purdy. We saw it the year before with Purdy. It didn't matter what he did. Didn't matter how great he played.
Okay,
he
but
could
it's not
never
Mahomes
move all
round.
the way
It's
up.
not Mahomes round. The Niners moved up all the
Bro,
time.
do you have
And they
it?
don't-
Do you have it?
No.
Like, he's moving it. He's moving it. Sam.
All right, my turn.
No,
I don't have the witty bar that Greg had.
All right. Come on, man. We already know that this is just that this is just crazy. This is just madness. I'm glad Greg said what he said. And it makes a lot of sense. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Nick's tiers? NFL team tiers. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions. Let's get in some fights. But ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to. Something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.